Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar, Industry Collaborations to Drive Decarbonization and Regenerative Practices today. My name is Guillermo Serra, and I'm the Head of Sales for Europe at Agritask. We're honored to welcome three distinguished professionals in this webinar today. First, we have Dominik Klauser, Director of Regenerative Agriculture at SAI Platform. He brings expertise from their groundbreaking initiative, Regenerating Together. This industry-first global framework not only defines regenerative agriculture, but also provides an industry-aligned approach to mitigate climate impact, enhance soil health, preserve biodiversity, and uplift farmers' livelihoods. We have also Daniella Malin, Head of Impact and Collaberation at Cool Farm Alliance. She will be sharing insights from an organization committed to advancing sustainable farming practices. Cool Farm Alliance is a global science-led community connecting agriculture, commerce, and knowledge, championing the Cool Farm tool, a respected and standardized engine for sustainability calculations. Finally, we have joining us Nick Engbers, who is the Global Technology and Sustainability Manager at McCain Foods, sharing his experiences on how companies like McCain are working with both organizations to enhance sustainability and regenerative practices in his organization. Hosting this webinar is Agritask. We're a crop supply intelligence company providing visibility into predictability and sustainability of crop supply for food and beverage enterprises. Our software as a service platform is a crucial link that directly connects enterprises to growers and suppliers at the source of their value chain. We empower businesses to monitor, support, and enforce scalable economic practices, safeguarding crop quality, enhancing crop quality, and ensuring sustainable cultivation practices. Thanks everyone for joining. To start, we would like to yield the word now to Dominik, who will set the context and start the purpose of this webinar. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, Guillermo, for these introductory words, and thank you all for joining today's call. Maybe as I start with introducing, what exciting work, or hopefully exciting work, Cool Farm Alliance and SAI Platform are planning to do together. Let me first show you a couple of slides on the context where I explain more the SAI Platform's approaches, and then Daniela comes in with the respective approach from the Cool Farm Alliance. So if you can share the slides now, that would be great. And I can also make sure that they're full screen. Potentially, is it visible now? Let me start talking on it. No, it's not full screen yet. Sorry for that. Here we go. So let me first introduce you to the agenda of today. So first, I quickly introduce the purpose of today's session. After that, I give you a quick introduction of SAI Platform and SAI Platform's Regenerating Together program. Then I hand over to Daniela, who will introduce the Cool Farm Alliance and the Cool Farm tool and talk about collaboration points. And finally, Nick will talk about, discuss a use case of McCain, how he uses both solutions from the Cool Farm Alliance and SAI Platform, after which we then have a discussion. Let me start with the purpose of today. So when we came together, the Cool Farm Alliance and SAI Platform, to establish a stronger plan for collaboration, we really thought we should help our respective or our shared members to provide more clarity, particularly on the following points: the distinct roles that we have, but also the complementarity between the roles of the Cool Farm Alliance and SAI Platform. The second aspect is then also many members, or many of our shared members, want to get more clarity on how to navigate the quite dynamic and the quite complex environment of this agricultural sustainability landscape overall, particularly with the context of measuring and progressing towards outcomes, but also then reporting against these outcomes, for instance, in the context of regenerative agriculture. So we will also then talk to you about how we will be partnering moving forward to help you navigate this dynamic and complex landscape, as said, with a use case from McCain. Finally, of course, we would want to work more with you. We want to help you. So there will be a call to action on how we want to make this happen. So this is the broad overview of what we want to talk today. And with that, I give you a quick introduction of the SAI platform. SAI stands for Sustainable Agriculture Initiative. So we really want to promote sustainable or regenerative agriculture across farming systems across the world to, to improve the impact of farming that farming has on our planet. In brief, for those who don't know the SAI platform too well, our vision is to, is to create a sustainable, thriving, and resilient agricultural sector. So we're really farm-facing to protect the Earth's resources, human rights, and animal welfare. So we really focus at farm level. We do so by harnessing the collaborative power of our members, and our members mostly consist of the food and beverage industry, so off-takers or downstream actors in the value chain from farmers.
Dom?
Yeah.
Just a quick introduction. The slides don't seem to be progressing and they're not in full screen. Maybe, I don't know if you're sharing the wrong screen or if you just,
okay,
the button didn't click.
They are in my case, so this is interesting.
Okay, now it is.
Let me check again. Are slides now changing?
We are on a new slide now, so that...
Is it the slide indicating vision and purpose?
Yes.
Okay,
correct.
Yeah. Thank you. So thanks, Danielle, for that.
Yeah, it's not in full screen.
Okay, cool. So I think there might be a bit of a lag. So I talked about vision and purpose now in terms of focus areas. Our focus areas are industry solutions. So we work particularly with the dairy, with the beef and the crops industry to develop schemes for, for verifying sustainability status of farming systems. The new program that I'm going to talk to you today is about regenerative agriculture. So creating sort of a standard of what the industry sees as a regenerative farmer or a regenerative supply chain, and then acting against that through our working groups across crops, dairy, and beef. I move to the next slide, and please shout out if you don't see the next slide. What you see here is our membership. We have roughly 200 members. Again,
we don't see it.
You cannot see your screen yet.
Interesting.
Now we can.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, so there seems to be a technical hiccup. In that case, what I would recommend to do is I have to share it like that, unfortunately. So this is the 170 plus members you see in our that are members of SAI Platform. Let me quickly talk about our Regenerating Together program. This program was funded roughly 2 years ago by 33 members. They were already part of the SAI Platform membership, but they really felt a need and a desire to standardize the understanding of regenerative agriculture in the food and beverage sector. They noticed that a lot of them themselves created their own frameworks for regenerative agriculture, which caused a certain level of confusion with farmers and other contributors in agricultural value chains around different standards and different definitions of what good looks like. So really the purpose of the program was to develop an industry-wide definition of regenerative agriculture and the outcomes we derive from it. And we did so by creating a framework in terms of how we define regenerative agriculture and what outcomes we expect from transitioning farming to regenerative agriculture. Also, we wanted to make sure that our members undergo that transition, so we devote a lot of resources also in supporting members in this transition. So by providing guidance, by providing best practice examples, by sharing knowledge between members on how to transition a farming system to regenerative agriculture. I will now dig deeper into the framework, which is the key of what we want to discuss today from our side. So the framework is really the purpose of the framework is to create a definition of, as I said, of what Regen Ag is and what outcomes we expect from it. And to do so, we have developed a 4-step process, which is undergone at farm level, where we first analyze a context of a farm operation. What are the environmental risks? What are the production risks at farm levels? At farm level, that's the first step. That then goes to the second step, where we that leads to the identification of appropriate outcomes to measure and report progress against. So if your risk is, for instance, water availability, the outcome you would go for is water use efficiency, or water holding capacity of your soil. The selection of outcome would then guide the selection of a practice that a farmer would adopt in that case to improve performance against that outcome. And then finally, progress would be monitored, and of course, ideally, impact would be reported, for instance, using the Cool Farm Alliance solutions on measuring and reporting progress against these outcomes. What you see here is a very rough overview of the process, which in more detail looks like that. And I think that's really where you need a full screen. So I try to switch back to full screen. But you see the same process here, where we have, the material criteria is what you have in the context analysis. This is the questions you have to answer there. You have to prioritize these material criteria depending on the context of your farming operation. That will then lead you to a selection of outcomes, which you see in the middle. We have 10 outcomes. They span 4 impact areas of soil health, water, biodiversity, and climate. And then according to the outcomes you prioritize in the framework, you would then be free as a farmer to adopt the practices that lead to improved performance against these outcomes. So that's a broad overview of the framework. And the whole purpose of it is to really help you as a farmer or as a food and beverage company to understand how far you are or how far you have progressed in a transition towards regenerative agriculture and make claims accordingly. With that, I apologize again for the hiccup with the slides, and I would like to hand over to you, Daniella, to talk about the Cool Farm Alliance's approach and solutions. So thank you for your attention already here, and I'm trying again to.
A pleasure, and thank you all for being here. You can keep the slides up because I'll just go on to the next one there. And we had understood as the mandate, as Dom said, for this webinar to help also explain the relationship between the Cool Farm Alliance and the Cool Farm Tool and SAI Platform. So you're starting to get a view into that, I hope, from Dom's remarks, but we'll dig in a little bit more deeply into the Cool Farm Alliance and Cool Farm Tool and then come back to that relationship. So the Cool Farm Alliance and the Cool Farm Tool, what is its real purpose? And especially in the context of this conversations, the role that this tool and this alliance plays is in revealing the changes that farmers can make to reduce emissions, increase carbon, and improve biodiversity and water. It's very useful to have a tool to gain those insights, and then to use that knowledge to encourage, motivate, and reward good practice. So the Cool Farm Tool, as many people know, is an on-farm greenhouse gas calculator. You plug in your inputs and it shows results. We'll see those in a little bit. But really that's the orientation is what can you do? How good would it be? How good are those changes? And yeah, sort of how much benefit do you get and in which categories? Let's go to the next slide, because another central sort of organizing set of priorities for the Cool Farm Alliance is really this. If you've been in this space at all, you can't miss the clarion call for alignment and harmonization in a quantification methodology. And that's really a focus for the Cool Farm Alliance, is to support this industry alignment in quantification methodology. And then why have that alignment in quantification? It's for impact. So the other main focus and purpose is to support and collect that impact. So with those two slides, hopefully you're starting to get a sense of the real core kind of vision and mission for the Cool Farm Alliance. It's really at scale to provide this literacy building insights from the Cool Farm Tool. You can go to the next slide. There are a lot of quantification tools that are country specific or crop specific. There are very few that are global and applicable to all major crops and livestock. So that is the core, one of the core distinguishing features of the Cool Farm Tool. And the 6 of them are what you're seeing on the screen here. So global is what we just talked about, so globally applicable, applying to all major crops and livestock. Science-based, so a huge amount of underlying evidence and research going into the underlying methodologies. Farmer-focused in being free for any farmer anywhere. The Cool Farm Alliance and Cool Farm Tool are not a commercial software that's being sold. It is a platform really to convene and collect the very best in quantification methodology. So it's an industry platform and really building a movement to collectively build the literacy around agriculture as it relates to greenhouse gas emissions and other environmental impacts. Industry owned is the 5th pillar. So this is not an academically based tool. It is really designed by and for the industry. And finally, multi-metric, so not just carbon. You can go to the next slide. We're going to dig into the tool itself, which is sort of central to what the Cool Farm Alliance is all about. And one of the other ways we like to talk about it, and you can move to the next slide, is really democratizing knowledge. So when a farmer has these sort of features or qualities in their hands, the conversation buyer to supplier can be more democratic and equalized. Both can look together at what will reduce emissions, what practices those that would take, and how much benefit each practice change would give. So what you're seeing is the data input screen, and there's a sort of a bar along the top showing you the steps you go through from crop details, your soil characteristics, your inputs, your energy use, your irrigation, if there's more energy in that, and the carbon tab, and then the transport, and then over to results. So each tab has some data inputs, and the key, I think, here is the live results on the left. As you make changes, you immediately see those how the effects of those changes on each category. So you can go to the next emissions. And here we get a little glimpse of the results. Now, the thing to notice about the results is that it's not one number, because what would you do with one number, right? It's a whole set of numbers which creates that engagement. So with those categories of emissions, you can look into, well, which ones do I want to focus on? And it's that engagement. So you see your results for the whole farm, you see them per unit of production and per unit of land, and you see it numerically and graphically. So yeah, again, it's really to engage all relevant stakeholders, the farmers and the buyers in the conversation. You can move to the next slide. And here's a glimpse of the biodiversity results. So multiple species, how the practices that you employ impact the different species, and the level in these speedometers of biodiversity, as far as the farmed products, the production practices, the small habitats and the large habitats. And you can move to the next slide. Just a little look at the user base. So it has grown quite a bit throughout the world, and really used by most of the world's largest multinationals, large and small companies, and quite a bit of growth over the last couple of years. One of the major areas of growth for the Cool Farm tool is in the API, the application programming interface. So the user interface is what you were just seeing, and that's manual entry of data, very useful because you get the immediate results. But it's in the API that the largest growth is what we're seeing. So more and more other farm management software are connected to the Cool Farm tool for the sustainability credentials. You can move to the next slide. And just a look at our members. We are actually, it says 153, we're up over 160 now in members. But again, you probably can tell here quite a bit of overlap with SAI Platform, which leads to this webinar. And, yeah, you can go to the next slide. So I'm going to move on to then, okay, what does that mean about the relationship between SAI and CFA when the membership, as you saw, is shared? But before that, just to mention that we are gearing up for the Cool Farm Alliance annual meeting in Amsterdam in April 2023. And to please note that and consider joining us. It's going to be an amazing gathering. The program is really coming together beautifully. I'm seeing a question here. information from the Cool Farm tool. What can help me know next steps, how to reduce greenhouse gas on my farm? Okay. So, yep, I'll take that question very quickly. As you run through the Cool Farm tool, you can basically toggle different switches, and that's how you know what to do. That's one of the most immediate ways. Rather than having somebody tell you what to do, you can try out things that you might have had in mind anyway, and go ahead and model that in the Cool Farm tool. And as you play around, you learn for yourself what applies, what of the practices you're interested in doing will have a bigger or a smaller impact. So it's really a self-teaching device, if that makes sense. So you can key in, I'll try a cover crop. How good would that be? Reduce my fertilizer by 20%. What kind of a difference would that make? Get a different type of fertilizer on my field. How much of a difference would that make? Or change my transportation distances or energy use, that sort of thing. Okay, so let's now, I don't know how I'm doing on time, but just I think I can cover this. This is like, I think, sort of a core purpose of the webinar. So how do Cool Farm and SAI Platform relate to each other, act together? Yeah, you can go to the next slide, thank you. So we thought it might help to just have an image in mind and came up with this idea of rowing, where if SAI Platform's role is more in harnessing the collective power of this group of companies, that might be the coxswain in that boat, keeping the oars coordinated and on time. So that coordination role, whereas the Cool Farm tool is the tool itself, the oar. That's how movement forward transpires. So that's one maybe helpful metaphor. For a lot of years, we really talked in terms of qualitative, where the SAI Platform had a lot of sort of a qualitative approach, whereas they would look to the Cool Farm tool for the quantitative approach. And I think that still, to some extent, applies. But I hope that helps and makes sense. There's a sort of a coordinating role that SAI Platform plays, and a more in the weeds, let's say, or in the practice choices role that the Cool Farm tool plays, and really the more granular level of data as it relates to agriculture. One last thing to mention about the Cool Farm tool is the Cool Farm Alliance also has a kind of a convening role in the industry, and particularly as it relates to that, what I was saying earlier, harnessing the highest levels of expertise when it comes to methodology, quantification methodology. So really playing a role in kind of coordinating and aligning the methodology, as mentioned. Okay, I think that pretty much does it for me. Next slide. I'm right. Okay, yeah, so I guess one more, just this will illuminate a little bit more of what I was just saying. So SAI Platform, aligning the sector, claims and verification, regenerative ag performance levels, and enabling farmer engagement. And then on the Cool Farm tool side, more the quantification, informed engaged decision-making, measuring progress against environmental outcomes, and enabling the engagement. You'll see that engagement is really shared, and we'll see that in the next slide. So one more view kind of at this relationship. So as you saw, the missions are very aligned and the roles are complementary. SAI Platform is really on the aligning the sector, getting everyone rowing in the same direction. Both really work quite intensely on the farmer and supplier engagement side. When it comes to regenerative agriculture, that step one of the framework that Dom presented is all about prioritizing. So that's really a role that SAI Platform is taking a lead on. Then when it comes to measuring that progress, that you would look to the Cool Farm tool. As we saw from the interactive nature of the Cool Farm tool, there's quite a bit of prioritization that you can do on the greenhouse gas metric within the Cool Farm tool. But when it comes to regen, the prioritization is really more on the SAI Platform. And then finally, both really support in the claiming and valorizing, essentially, or kind of what are the benefits, but both play a role in that. Okay, so yeah, no, I think we're clear. I'm seeing a couple of questions come through. how do you manage and measure the quality of what is being delivered, as this has enormous influence on the outputs, garbage in, garbage out, essentially, right? And one way to, I guess I'll take that one. And the next question is asking for examples, which is exactly what McCain is here to do. So I'll just take this one question. How do we manage the quality of the data inputs? One of the best ways to manage this is the fact that it is a self-assessment. So it's in your own interest to put the highest quality data in. It's really the best answer. Is it's primarily used for self-assessment, and so it's in your own interest, and it's in the user's own interest, whoever that is, to provide the best inputs, because then the outputs are most accurate and most tailored to the actual conditions on hand. Other than that, there's data analysis in aggregate that can be done outside of the Cool Farm tool, so outlier detection. But it's the buy-in on why you're doing it in the first place that will always be the best guarantee for quality. Great, thank you. And over to you, Nick.
Thank you very much. I'm here to tell a little bit of how we use the Cool Farm tool and how we also use the SAI Platform Region Ag working group. Can we go to the next slide, please, to give a little bit of an introduction here. So as McCain, we produce a lot of French fries mainly. We also do other things, but our main business is producing fries. And we do that on every continent on the world except Antarctica. And we made some commitments. We contract directly from our growers, and we do want to implement regenerative agricultural practices on all of those contracted acres by 2030. And we have different programs in all of our growing regions to work with our growers to get there. Next to that, we also have CO2 commitments. So not only Region Ag, but also to reduce our CO2 footprint from potato production by 25% in 2030. For us, those things go hand in hand, because regenerative agriculture can reduce the reliance on synthetic impact. And we can work more with our soils if we implement those regenerative agricultural practices that we have defined, and as you can see here on the screen. Well, as already said, different processors build their own regenerative agricultural frameworks, and so did we. We defined our own definitions. We also measure this already at scale with our growers, but we try to find better ways to measure that. We try to find better ways to track CO2 emissions from our fields, but also to measure regenerative agriculture on all of the acres we contract. And that is what I want to talk a little bit more in the next slide, please. So one slide further. Yeah, thank you. So this is how we use the Cool Farm tool until today. Since 2019, we have been using the Cool Farm tool API, so not the web-based interface, but the automated interface, to calculate CO2 emissions on a field-by-field basis in every growing region. It doesn't mean we do it for every single field on Earth that we contract, but we do it for a fair amount of fields, over 8,000 a year, roughly. And we do that for all of our growing regions to calculate our global weighted average CO2 per ton, as you can see in the trend lines. And also you can split it out per region where the emissions are coming from. So as Daniella already mentioned, we can now look at where is the contribution of CO2 mainly in potato production, and what should we reduce first and foremost to reduce our CO2 footprint. And as you can see, fertilizer here is a big emission factor. We made some progress from 2019 until 2021, but unfortunately, because of the weather conditions in the bigger growing regions, our CO2 per ton went up again slightly, unfortunately. We were still aiming to get our 25% reduction, and we're having all kinds of initiatives in all the regions to get there. And we also, of course, want to learn from the different regions and learn what some growers in certain regions do other than other growers, to see, can that help our supply base in general in the region. Next slide, please. And so this is the CO2, but we also have the regenerative agriculture agenda. Currently, that is not measuring CO2 per se, but it goes hand in hand. Our regenerative agriculture framework, which is available online, focuses on the 7 indicators from our principles as we have defined them. One of them, of course, for instance, is soil cover days, and the SAI framework also shares that indicator. Our framework is aligned with the one of SAI, but as McCain, we do acknowledge we contracted potatoes, and the potatoes is one crop in the rotation of a field, and there can be way more crops within that exact same field in that rotation. And the risk there is that different processors ask our growers and their growers, the same growers, all kinds of different questions, questionnaires, please fill this data sheet, which requires our growers to spend a lot of time on paperwork. And we do not want that. So that is why we were one of those companies that gave SAI the mandate to please define that regenerative agricultural framework so to be shared with all the processors. So we can unify the metrics and also agree on what defines a regenerative agricultural field and consequently regenerative agricultural produce. Well, so that is currently where we also contribute to the SAI platform, and we want to harmonize that further, including also the components of the CoolFarm tool framework. So can we use that platform more within SAI? We really support that initiative. Next slide, please. And one of the things, how we do it currently as McCain, but what we would see as one of the components of regenerative agriculture that could be measured is soil cover days. So instead of asking that via surveys and then have quite some variations in answers likely by the definition of soil cover days, is that planting date? Is that emergence date? What defines, what is cover? We need to standardize and agree upon what soil cover days mean if we want to measure that across the supply chains and across the world. And we would propose to do that as automated as possible to not increase the burden on our growers. So if we then have a field location, we could measure that from space using the open source satellite imagery and measure biomass, NDVI for the people that know the indices. And if we look at that for multiple years, we could get the soil cover days for all those years and identify the main crop and also cover crop existence on a certain piece of land. And I think we all agree that we want to keep our soil covered as long as possible throughout the year with main crops and cover crop. So there is a way how to measure that and then combine that with all kinds of different metrics, like the type of crop, the different families that are growing there. Combining automated data analytics with inputs, grower inputs that we cannot measure automatically to define regenerative agriculture and monitor change within fields and within regions. Currently, we do this ourselves as McCain, but we would really like to make this broader so we measure it all the same way and we can define regenerative agriculture together as all members in SAI and globally define region ag. That's what I wanted to share with you here.
Okay, I think we are finished with the presentation, so we can unshare the slides again, and I think we can open for back to you, Guillermo.
Thank you, Dominik. Thank you, Daniela. Thank you, Niek, for your great input. We're going to proceed with a few questions we've received in the past days for this webinar. First of all, we Agritask as a software as a service solution provider, we often face prospects at different stages in the regenerative agriculture process. And this has been an increasing request across the regions where we work. So if someone's just starting this process, if someone is fresh and wants to know how can I transition to regenerative agriculture, how can they start, and how can they measure the timing for this project? How can they look at the starting of the project, the execution of the project, and what will be your opinions? Daniella, would you like to start?
Sure. Yeah. So if you're just starting out, the Cool Farm tool is really a great place to go. So log in, free account. It's only when you need to manage data, aggregate data, that you are fall under the commercial license for the Cool Farm tool. So it's a public asset that the members are making to the industry and to the farming community at large. The members make that available. And by going into the Cool Farm tool and playing around, you quickly learn really a lot about regen ag, about soil health, about how the benefits of soil health translate into lower greenhouse gas emissions. So one of the best place to start is to just log in and start playing around, put in a crop, implement no tillage by modeling it, see how much of a difference that makes, implement cover crops, see how much of a difference that makes, and you start to get a feel for what are the big levers and what are the smaller levers, and how, as you move forward, you're going to continuously quantify and track.
Fantastic. Do you have anything to add, Dominik and Niek?
I think it's definitely a good start, and I think the part that I fully agree with Daniella is creating an understanding of the task ahead and the challenge or what you want to do. I think the one thing where I sometimes advise our members is about regen ag is not just it can be many outcomes at the end of the day. You can have something on biodiversity, water, and I think for that to prioritize that, context matters. So having a good understanding of what really matters in the farming system you're targeting, whether it's water, whether it's biodiversity, what is the biggest problem you're facing, and tackling that particularly is an approach to do.
Thank you, Dominik. We have several questions from our attendees. We will start with Harris. Are you also thinking of using soil samples to make sure that you're capturing the benefits of carbon sequestration from regenerative agriculture practices for the growers?
I don't know if I should. I'll kick it off again, and hopefully others can join in. Of course, definitely, absolutely. That is so important, and especially as we move into Tier 3, soil sampling will be a requirement. Measurement is a requirement of a Tier 3 model. So, and the Cool Farm tool, the soil carbon module, is moving to a Tier 3, a new, basically, quantification kind of engine for it. So yeah, so that'll be coupled with soil sampling, and that's really the best form of ground truthing. I mean, models can only take us so far. We have to ground truth. So yeah, it's great. It's essential.
Great, thank you, Daniella. How would you recommend companies with very complex value chains, sourcing a raw material that needs to be converted, sometimes 2, 3, 4 steps, industrial until you get the final product, get closer to the farmers? And are there any alternatives for those who aren't able to get closer? Dominik, what is your experience in this regard?
Well, I get that's a difficult question to answer. So I I was wishing you were opting for Daniella to answer that. No, I think this is. I think the one thing that that I would recommend is always getting clarity on the claim you want to make. So is it, and sometimes or often there is that ambition to have a piece of carbon, a percentage of carbon emissions saved attached to a product. We at SAI are not playing on that field. I think for us it's important to determine whether a farm could be considered as regenerative or not. And I think for that you can engage with your suppliers. We just had a discussion today with some of the major suppliers in our membership and some of the major brands on how this can be done and how the process can be verified throughout processing. but it's really about these qualitative claims in our case. And I think for quantitative claims, I probably hand the hot potato. Well, I would love to hand the potato over to Nick, the potato expert, but I might hand it over first to Daniella on that.
Yes,
on her
Nick.
view of that.
Sure. So that's great. I'm so glad to hear, Dominik, that you are one of the, that's another great example of how SAI Platform functions, right? Is to bring the supply chain together and start to have those conversations. I think, from my side, actually, one of the benefits, the greatest benefits of the Cool Farm tool is the relationship building. So even though you're removed, this might not be a satisfying answer because it's not easy and it's not automated, but it does do wonders for everyone on the chain to improve those relationships and have them. And asking and getting into the weeds on the agronomic practices in place and the trade-offs and the decisions around those agronomic practices has tended to build a lot of mutual respect and visibility and transparency. And so I don't think there's an easy answer when you're 3, 4, 5 steps removed. What do you do? How do you do it? Except the only, as far as I can take it is, invest in those relationships.
Thank you, Daniella. Nick?
Yeah, it's tricky. Like we contract directly from our growers, so we have it's slightly different. I would suggest to can you identify a sample of a few growers within your supply chain? Can you get a few farms? Can you get a bit of an insight what really goes on there within your sourcing region? Even if it's a country or it's a province, try to get there and then start from there, as Daniella says, start those conversations, and then from there you can map it out. I do think there is quite an interest to work on this from what we notice within our supply chain from our growers, also from products that we don't directly source, other products than potatoes. People are very keen on understanding their CO2. What can we do differently? But indeed, you need to engage. You need to start by talking.
Thank you. And from as a point of advice, how would you recommend Nick, companies to craft their KPIs they want to gather from collaborations with Cool Farm Tool, with SAI? What would be some guidelines that you would give for other crops, for other implementations? What do you think is pivotal to ensure that their KPIs are aligned with the processes?
Yeah, I think let's have a very close look at what SAI produces in their KPIs, their principles. We think they make sense. I think they are designed from all kinds of regenerative ag frameworks that have been created so far. There's a lot of debate surrounding them in the past 2 years. So have a look at those at the framework whenever it's fully ready and up and running, and then see, okay, can we measure this already within our supply chain? What are we missing still? Do we know our fields? Do we know our growers? And then focus on the things that you could measure. And that really depends on your industry. That really depends on the type of crop, if you're dairy, if you're meat, if you're potato like us. So it's hard to give a very generalistic answer to that. But I would say, let's look at the SAI platform, see what's in there, and can we define that? Can we measure change on those indicators that they come up with?
Great. Thank you. Dominik, how and Daniella, how would a joint project between CFA, SAI, and members look like? How can companies proceed if they're interested in doing a joint project with you?
Should I have a first go, Daniella? Is that okay? I think we are really eager to help, and we're really eager to engage with our members, or generally with companies in the in the food and beverage sector, particularly on getting projects going. And I think building on what Nick has just said before is, I think we at SAI Platform can help understand which indicators that matter, which outcomes matter to the context of your operations, to the context of the farming system. So I think that the framework can help guide companies through that. Where really then, where the Cool Farm Alliance comes in is then measuring progress against those, and measuring progress against those in a cost-efficient, scalable, but still scientifically rigid way. And I think that's why how we want to get together is creating these protocols together on identifying the right outcomes and measuring them in a scalable, affordable way. I don't want to preempt too much, so I hand over to you, Daniella, to.
Sure. Yeah. No, so we are excited about really launching a set of projects. And so I don't know if this is the moment, but the call to action that we alluded to in the beginning is this exact thing. If you are ready, if you are interested in doing a project, a regen project, really looking at improving regen in your supply chain, and likely with a carbon element to it, since that's central to regen and soil health, which is core to regen. It also has greenhouse gas benefits. Then by all means get in touch, because what we'd like to do is actually build this portfolio of projects, and really look together at what it takes and what the barriers are, where people are getting stuck and how we can overcome them together. Within the Cool Farm Alliance, we're going to be launching a new kind of offering, which is currently going by the name of the Impact Track. So you can be a regular member and do your own work, or you can join the Impact Track. And if you do, what that means is that you will be not public, but public within that confidential group of people who have stepped forward, and you will let the staff and the other representatives in the Impact Track know what your goals actually are, what you're shooting for, what your plans are for the next 12, 18 months or so, and then come back and we will host a series of peer kind of learning calls, and come back at the end of the year and just look together at how it went, and not in a way of sort of look how great we are, we're only very successful, but really dig into what does it take to make a difference, and what's easy, what's hard, and how we can solve the hard things together.
Great, Daniella. We have a question specific to you. Do you offer training to members and users, helping them gain confidence in using the tool and minimizing the room for error in data capture? This comes from Charlie Curtis.
Excellent. Yes, absolutely. We not only have a training program, we also have a certified advisors program that we are now, I think, in the midst of the first cohort of. So by all means, get in touch if you are interested in building that confidence. Support at coolfarmtool.org is one of the best places to start.
Lovely. Also, Mats Rosenberg is asking, are there examples of the CFT having been accepted as modeling tool for BM 00042 certifications?
Sure. So that's the Vera methodology for improved agricultural land management. And that is a carbon offset protocol. So part of the carbon markets. The Cool Farm tool does not yet operate in the carbon markets at all, not used for carbon offsets. And the focus of the Cool Farm tool, because of how interactive it is, you saw it's a scope 3, it's an engagement tool. It's a way to really look into what's going on and what could happen on the farm from a greenhouse gas perspective. So really more around engagement, around insetting, around scope 3. Yep, not on the carbon markets just yet.
Thank you so much, Daniella. I have one final question, and I just want to open the floor for this one to the three of you. 2030 and decarbonization and net zero, are we on track? Do we need to emphasize more on other aspects? Where do you see where we are and what needs to be emphasized moving on?
As a global community, we are not anywhere near on track. That's the reason to have these kinds of webinars. We all need to almost 180 change our orientation from what we all know to be business as usual. It's a very difficult transition. The size of the transition that needs to happen is hard to fathom for any of us. Though it is also very exciting what's happening now, the amount of interest in regen, the amount of understanding for the importance of soil integrity, soil biology. It's really a moment. I guess where I sit with this, given how off track we really are, is I guess use the analogy of pushing a snowball uphill. It feels very incremental at the moment, very incremental. And at some point, and hopefully very soon, and hopefully in time, we're going to crest that hill, and the snowball is going to start flowing downhill. We do need a complete change in pace, and it's possible. I really do believe that the awakening is happening, and it's very exciting. But we all need to push and keep encouraging each other.
Any thoughts on that, Dominik?
Yeah, just a quick one. I think, no, we are not on track. I think that's clear. I think the one thing is by getting back on track or trying to get back on track on carbon, I think we have to just make sure that we don't lose track of other important indicators such as biodiversity and water and even socioeconomic aspects of farming, where I think the alarm bells are going off everywhere, or in many places, and we just have to make sure that we don't. I think it's sometimes called the tunnel vision, so that we keep, we keep focus on many of these dimensions, and Regen Ag is a good way to do so, I think.
Great.
I think as McCain, we committed to 25%, which is already if we look at it, what it's going to take. It's hard to do. It's a very tough journey already. Not even talking about net zero in that regard yet. I do think focusing now on regenerative agriculture, making our soils more resilient, that they can provide some of the water needed. They can give the crop some nutrients because it has that capacity to do so again. That will also help our CO2 targets, and that can then ultimately go hand in hand. And regenerative agriculture then also helps us to become more resilient for climate extremes, which are very likely to occur in the future. So regenerative agriculture can be a vehicle for also getting our CO2 commitments, but it's a tough road ahead. And it's not just input reduction, it's not just regenerative agriculture for McCain, it's also looking at different types of potato varieties that could do better, that can be produced with less inputs. It's all these questions that need to be addressed together to have a solution.
Great, Nick. Thank you so much for your participation. We're coming to an end for this webinar today. This webinar was on the industry collaborations to drive decarbonization and regenerative agriculture practices. We were joined today by Dominik Klauser, Director of Regenerative Agriculture at SAI Platform, Daniella Malin, Head of Impact and Collaberation at Cool Farm Alliance, and Niek Engbers, the Global Technology and Sustainability Manager at McCain Foods. Thank you, the three of you, for participating today and the great insights you shared with our participants. Thank you all the participants for joining us today, for asking us questions. I wish you a very good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for joining this webinar.
Pleasure.
Thank you for having us.